Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Gavin's College Football Talk. I hope you enjoyed episode 1 and you're ready for episode 2. In this episode, we'll look in depth into the offseason. When a college football season comes to a close, most people think that there's not going to be much to talk about surrounding college football. Those people will be incredibly wrong. I could actually make a case that the offseason is more interesting and impactful than the regular season itself. This is due to many different factors and events that happen during the offseason, some of which we'll look at today in this episode. The first thing I'll talk about in this episode is the coaching carousel. Who got fired, who got hired, all that. Next, I'll give my 5 biggest winners and my 5 biggest losers of the transfer portal cycle. Lastly, I'll wrap up the episode by giving my mock draft of the first 15 picks of the NFL. If you enjoyed the first episode, I'm confident you'll enjoy this one. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the second episode of Gavin's College Football Talk. Everyone knows that a good sports team starts with its head coach. This is incredibly true when it comes to college football. Coaches are as important now as they have ever been before. Head coaches have to focus on recruiting players from the high school level, recruiting players from the transfer portal, and retaining their own players that are on the roster right now. And the most important thing that they have to do is win. If they can't check all 3 of those boxes, most importantly to win, then they'll get fired, even if it's during the season. We saw this happen several times this past season. Let me start with Penn State's James Franklin, who got fired on October 12th. In his 12 seasons at Penn State, he won 104 games. As I talked about in episode 1, Penn State came into this past season with incredibly high expectations, and they never lived up to those expectations. The thing that always haunt James Franklin was that he could never win the big game, and he had a chance to rewrite that narrative with the home game against Oregon this past season. They came close to beating the Ducks, but they ultimately fell short. And that was okay, but then after Oregon, they let go of the rope. They lost back-to-back against major underdogs, UCLA and Northwestern, after Oregon. And this ended up causing Franklin's tenure of 11-plus years at Penn State to be over. Within the same calendar year, Penn State reached the cusp of the national championship game, only to fall against Notre Dame in the college football playoff semifinal. Since they fired him, Penn State had to pay him a buyout of $48 million and had to pay him the remainder of the 2025 salary as well. This means that they really wanted him gone. Since Franklin was one of the first Power 4 coaches to be fired during the season, Penn State had a head start when it came to looking for a new head coach. They struggled to find their guy that they wanted. They swung and missed on a couple guys, and they didn't want to hire interim head coach Terry Smith, and it started to look a little gloom for the Penn State head coaching search. But that was until they ultimately settled on hiring Matt Campbell from Iowa State on December 5th. I think this was a great hire, and I also think Penn State was lucky that they were able to find a guy like Matt Campbell to take the job after looking for since October. Next, let's look at LSU's head coach Brian Kelly, who won 34 games and 4 seasons at LSU. Kelly was fired the night after LSU's third loss of the 2025 season, a 49-24 home blowout to Texas A&M. Going into the season, just like James Franklin and Penn State, LSU had very high expectations. They had an elite quarterback in Garrett Nussmeier. He had the weapons on the outside, and they got a bunch of good defenders to help that side of the ball. You could actually say that they lived up to those high expectations, beating a top 5 Clemson team on the road to start the season last year. But that was LSU's first and last season opening win under Brian Kelly. But Clemson turned out not to be so well, so that ended up not being that big of a win. Things went sideways very quickly with loss for Brian Kelly and LSU, with losses to Ole Miss, Vanderbilt, and Texas A&M, like I just mentioned previously. Kelly left Notre Dame for a chance to win his first FBS national championship, but he never even made the college football playoff while at LSU. He won a division title in his first season in 2022, but he never finished higher than 13th in the final college football playoff standings. So what does LSU decide to do? Well, they decided to hire Lane Kiffin, arguably the most, I'm not going to say most hated, but he's definitely he's on the villain side of head coaches. They hired Lane Kiffin from Ole Miss, their rival, on November 30th. I mean, this is obviously a good hire for LSU, but Kiffin comes in with a lot of baggage. But all he has done in the last couple of years is win. In 6 seasons at Ole Miss, he won 55 games. LSU is also making sure that he has enough resources and money to help build the team that he wants. Reports are going around that the roster he created for next season is worth about $40 million. 2 more SEC coaches that got fired during the season were Florida's Billy Napier, who only won 22 games in 4 seasons, and he was fired on October 19th, and Auburn's Hugh Freeze, who won 15 games in 3 seasons, who was fired on November 2nd. Both Florida and Auburn have pretty high expectations going into the season, nothing like Penn State or LSU, but they both ended up firing their head coaches before Thanksgiving. After another slow start to the season that included losses to South Florida, LSU, and Miami, Napier couldn't dig himself out of the hole this time, so Florida ended up firing him. They ended up hiring John Summerall from Tulane on November 30th. In his time at Auburn, Freeze had a 6-16 record in the SEC, and his tenure was marked by horrible home losses to New Mexico, Cal, Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, and Oklahoma. His last game at Auburn was a 10-3 home loss to Kentucky that saw old Auburn to fall to 4-5, 1-5 in SEC play. They ended up hiring Alex Golesh from South Florida on November 30th, which I think both John Summerall and Alex Golesh are good hires. I just think it's going to take them for a while to build what they want to build because of how tough the SEC is. Florida's been recruiting well, and Auburn's been recruiting well, but that doesn't matter. Let's see how Summerall and Golesh can fill out their rosters and get their plans and rosters in place to see how they do. I think it's going to take a while, but I think both of them were good hires for both schools, respectfully. Other notable schools that fired head coaches included Michigan, Michigan State, Kentucky, Arkansas, Virginia Tech, UCLA, Stanford, Oklahoma State, and many, many more. So that was the coaching carousel from this past season. Now here are my 5 winners from the transfer portal. Overall, these are not in specific order. These are just overall. My first team is Oklahoma State. In 2025, Oklahoma State had one of the worst seasons this century. They went 1-11 and didn't win a single FBS game. So they hired Eric Morris from North Texas, and the Cowboys have added 50-plus players from the transfer portal. They have signed 17 former North Texas players, including 5-star quarterback Drew Mestemaker and running back Caleb Hawkins, who was the national rushing touchdowns leader. And they also added wide receiver Wyatt Young, who was the 3rd in the FBS in receiving yards. They also added quality pieces not from North Texas. This includes a pair of 4-star receivers and a big-time defensive target and big-time defensive players as well. Will a roster of 65-plus new pieces be successful in year 1 under Eric Morris? We shall see. But this is the kind of class the Cowboys needed to have a shot at doing so. Coming in, I got Indiana, the defending champions, as a winner from the transfer portal. After coming off a national championship, you might have thought Indiana would slow down in the transfer portal. Well, you are wrong. The Hoosiers went to a portal for a quarterback for a 3rd straight year and landed arguably the best one in TCU's Josh Hoover. He is a multi-year starter who's thrown for nearly 10,000 yards in his career. And they also bring in Michigan State's best player overall wide receiver Nick Marsh, Kansas State's best defender, and Boston College's best weapon running back Turbo Richard. Lastly, they're also bringing in Wisconsin's best offensive lineman, Joe Bruner, to help with the front line. Indiana is now operating like a legitimate contender in the portal. They are bringing in a top 10 portal class. Will this be enough to win back-to-back national championships? We shall see. The next team that I have as winners from the transfer portal is LSU. You know that when LSU hired Lane Kiffin, they were going to try to turn into the portal king, hoping to create a championship roster for next season. I think they succeeded at this. They ended up having the number 1 transfer portal class in all of college football. The Tigers landed up arguably the number 1 transfer quarterback and Sam Levitt from Arizona State, and decided to get a former 5-star to back him up just in case. They'll get to throw to a new crop of wide receivers, which includes 4 4-stars from the transfer portal. That is insane. A team is lucky if they get one transfer 4-star wide receiver from the portal. LSU got 4. LSU also signed one of the most productive linebackers in T.J. Daugherty, coming from Ole Miss, and safeties Ty Benenfield, also coming from Ole Miss. My next team that is a winner from the transfer portal is the Kentucky Wildcats. When trying to compete in the SEC, having a good offensive line is very crucial to have success. First-year head coach Will Stein ended up putting together the best offensive line class of the portal cycle. They added Tennessee's offensive tackle Lance Hurd, the top-ranked center of the portal, and Baylor's Colton Price, and multi-year starter at guard Tega Teshabula from Ohio State. The Wildcats also flipped Notre Dame quarterback Kenny Minchey from Nebraska, and they landed former 5-star running back C.J. Baxter from Texas, and they also added a potential game-changing weapon on the outside and Nick Anderson from LSU. If Baxter and Anderson both can stay healthy, because that's been their biggest bugaboo in their college career, if they both can stay healthy, watch out for this Kentucky offense in the 2026 season. My last winner from the transfer portal cycle is Texas Tech. Even though they lost in the first playoff game last season, the Texas Tech Red Raiders proved that going all in when it comes to the portal pays big dividends. The Red Raiders were portal monsters yet again this offseason. They added quarterback Brendan Sorsby from Big 12 rival Cincinnati and added weapons surrounding him on the outside. This includes Malcolm Simmons from Auburn, Kenny Johnson from Pitt, and Dante Lee from Liberty. They went and got dudes on the defensive front as well. So it'll be interesting to see if this portal cycle will help return Texas Tech to the playoffs. We shall see. Now, here are my 5 losers from the transfer portal. Again, these are not in specific order, just overall. Alabama is one of those teams. I know some of you guys are going to say, Gavin, it's Alabama. How can they be a loser? Well, I have them as one of my 5 losers of the portal because of how many guys left them in the transfer portal, and that they really didn't exactly replace those guys with top-tier guys from the portal itself. They also whiffed on a numerous amount of players from the portal. This includes when their top target, Cam Coleman, decided to go to their SEC foe, the Texas Longhorns. And Texas also flipped the running back pledge that they had in Hollywood Smothers from NC State. They flipped him from Alabama too. So overall, they have 20 players and several starters to the portal and NFL draft. Sure, they've gotten some good replacements and guys like defensive lineman Devin Tompkins from USC and wide receiver Noah Rogers from NC State, but it's just not good for the Bama standards. Next team I have is Florida State. Florida State has the 25th ranked portal class, which is solid, but it's not what a 5-7 team needed to change its fortune ahead of a win or go home season for head coach Mike Norvell, who would already be fired by now if it wasn't for a $50 million buyout that Florida State would have to pay him. The Seminoles lost a lot of talent in the transfer portal. Star safety Earl Little Jr. is now at Ohio State. The program's most promising young wide receiver, Lewayne McCoy, left for Louisville, and starting linebacker Justin Cryer left for Texas. FSU also didn't exactly hit home runs in critical positions either. They really didn't find a quarterback that's going to save Norvell's job. They signed Ashton Daniels, who's a 2-time backup in stints at Stanford and Auburn, but I just don't think that's the quarterback that Florida State needs to help them get back to winning 8-9 games like they did in 2023. They also failed to add any weapons at receiver or tight end to help complement Deuce Robinson and Mekhi Danzey. Is this portal cycle enough to save Mike Norvell's job? I don't think so. My next team on the loser side of the transfer portal is the Iowa State Cyclones. The new head coach, Jimmy Rogers, had a difficult job ahead of him when he got to Iowa State because almost every good player on Iowa State's roster departed upon Matt Campbell's exit to Penn State. 45 Cyclones entered the portal this cycle. Of the team's season-ending 22 starters, 15 of them entered the portal, 6 of them graduated, and only 1 defensive end stayed. Some regular starters who were injured midseason left, key depth pieces departed, and young pieces that were going to define Iowa State's future left as well. This means that it's all on first-year head coach Rogers to pick up the pieces and build, which is very difficult to do in year one. It's hard to find a Power 4 team that's been hit harder in the cycle than Iowa State. My fourth team is the Duke Blue Devils. Oof. Duke got blindsided at the portal's deadlines close when star quarterback Darian Mensah opted to go into the portal. He ended up going to Miami. This was a crazy situation, however. He had already announced publicly that he planned to return in 2026, and he was among the highest paid players in the sport. He signed a two-year contract at $4 million annually. He had also just led Duke to win an ACC title, and he hopped into the portal anyway and left the Blue Devils in a possible position at quarterback with no proven solutions available and no time to create a solutions via back channeling, which is tampering. They went from one of the best quarterback situations in the country to one of the worst in just a few hours. The Blue Devils also lost some key pieces beyond Darian Mensah, too. They lost their leading wide receiver, Krishan Brown, to Virginia Tech, and safety Terry Moore to Ohio State. Oh, I forgot to mention, one of their best wide receivers, Cooper Burkhart, joined Darian Mensah to go to Miami in a package deal. I feel bad for Duke. My last team as a loser, that was a loser in the transfer portal this past offseason, is the Clemson Tigers. Clemson finally used the portal much more this offseason than any other before. They signed 10 transfers this cycle and had only signed 6 total since 2018. They went and got some good players in Colorado freshman London Marriott, cornerback Elliott Washington from Penn State, and all-conference safety from Old Dominion Jerome Carter. But they only got one player on the offensive side of the football, an SMU running back speedster, Chris Johnson. They need to get more on that side of the ball, and not going after a quarterback or a single offensive lineman this cycle could result in even more regression next year. There just isn't much experience in Clemson's quarterback room. Christopher Vizina has started one career game, and the other three scholarship quarterbacks are freshmen. Dabo Swinney is betting a lot that Vizina is the guy by not adding another arm to compete with him. And this could ultimately cost Dabo his job. I don't think they're going to fire him, but you never know. I've seen crazier things happen. The great news for Clemson, though, is that it held on to rising junior wide receiver TJ Moore, who was strongly tampered with into the portal. I bet it was Miami. Because he is from the Miami area, I bet it was Miami. But coming off the Tigers' worst season in a decade, they needed to be more active in the portal to avoid having another awful year. So, those are my 5 winners and my 5 losers from the transfer portal cycle. And the last topic for today's episode, I will give my mock draft of the first 15 picks in the 2026 NFL Draft. In this, I will not have any trades, and each team will stay at their specific spots. So, here are my first 15 picks of the NFL Draft. Coming at number 1, I have the Las Vegas Raiders selecting Fernando Mendoza, quarterback from Indiana. In a world of uncertainty, this feels like the closest thing to a sure bet. It makes too much sense for this not to happen. Here's the clear top quarterback in this year's class, and he's exactly who the Raiders need under center. And the Raiders need a quarterback anyway after cutting Geno Smith, who ended up signing with the Jets. So it is the Raiders, but I don't even think they can mess this up. I think that with the first pick, the Raiders will select Fernando Mendoza from Indiana. Coming number two, I got the New York Jets selecting Arvil Reese, a linebacker or edge from Ohio State. Reese's explosiveness makes him very scary and intimidating coming off the edge. A high upside prospect, few blockers are able to match his levels of explosiveness. He really wasn't a guy that was talked about a lot during the season, but he just had such high upside. And then the NFL front offices and those type of people, they're looking for guys with high upsides. So I think the New York Jets, perfect. I think that he is perfect for the New York Jets, especially with the Jets trading edge rusher Jermaine Johnson. I think Reese would kickstart the Jets rebuild on the defensive side of the football. At coming in number 3, I have the Arizona Cardinals selected David Bailey, from an edge from Texas Tech. He is the most productive pass rusher in this year's class. He had 14.5 sacks this past season at Texas Tech, and also tallied 19.5 total tackles for loss. His first step allows him to race past blockers with ease and allows him to rack up sacks and bunches. Coming number 4, I have the Tennessee Titans selecting Ruben Bain Jr., an edge from Miami. Bain's hand power and versatility could reinforce a front that already has all-pro defensive tackle Jeffrey Simmons and nearly acquired edge Jermaine Johnson, who came from the Jets. He is a perfect fit for new head coach Robert Saleh's defense due to his quickness and explosiveness. So I think he's a perfect pick for the Tennessee Titans. Coming in at number 5, I have the New York Giants selecting Sonny Styles, a linebacker from Ohio State. Styles' athleticism jumps off the page when he plays. He is a converted safety, so he is already quick and very rangy. He also has pretty good coverage skills as well. He can also rush off the edge, too, in the right defensive scheme. I think this is exactly who the Giants need on the defensive side of the football. You pair him with Jared Verse and other weapons that they have on the defensive side of the football. I think he is perfect for the New York Giants at number 5. Number 6, I have the Cleveland Browns selecting Francis Mauigoa, offensive tackle from Miami. The offensive line is a huge need for Cleveland, and they address it here with this pick. They need someone to protect Deshaun Watson or Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders, whoever the quarterback's going to be next year. They need someone to protect him. Mauigoa is a steady blocker and has massive power to generate movement and enough lower body quickness as well. I know offensive tackles aren't the most sexiest picks in the world, but I think Cleveland needs one, and I think they get one here coming at number 6. At number 7, I have the Washington Commanders selecting Caleb Downs, a safety from Ohio State. Downs has a high football IQ, and he's also versatile on the back end, and he's also very sure tackler as well. He also has very sure tackling ability as well, Washington gave up a lot of explosive plays this past season, and they also only had 8 interceptions in 2025, which was the 4th worst in the league. Downs could help with that, improve in both areas as well. Downs is just a stud. I mean, whatever you need him to do, he will do it. So I think this is a perfect pick for the Commanders. Coming in at number 8, I have the New Orleans Saints selecting Cardinal Tate, a wide receiver from Ohio State. Yes, another Ohio State Buckeye. The Saints have Chris Olave as wide receiver 1, but after that, there's a massive drop-off. So let's pair him with another great Ohio State wide receiver. Tate is a silky smooth route runner and has arguably the best hands in the class. He's also a 3-level threat, has plenty of range as a pass catcher. It looks like the Saints are set at quarterback with Tyler Shuck. Like I mentioned, they have Chris Olave as wide receiver 1. They signed Travis Etienne to be in the backfield. I guess maybe that means Kamara is going to be on the move. I don't know. But if you have an offense of Shuck, Olave, Tate on the outside, and Etienne in the backfield, Saints could be scary next year. Coming number 9, I have the Kansas City Chiefs selecting Monroe Freeling, offensive tackle from Georgia. Monroe is an excellent athlete who excels in space and on the move. His size and athleticism rank him as one of the best offensive tackles in the class. Kansas City also needs to make sure they can keep Patrick Mahomes upright coming into next year after tearing his ACL last year. So I think Kansas City needs offensive linemen, tackles to help keep Patrick Mahomes upright, and I think picking Monroe Freeling from Georgia is the perfect pick to help with that. Coming number 10, I have the Cincinnati Bengals selecting Mansour Delane, a cornerback from LSU. The Bengals gave up the second most yards per game and the third most points per game last year, so they need help in the secondary, so this pairing makes perfect sense. Delaney is a sticky cover corner who can play man-to-man with ease, but he's equally as good in zone coverage as well. So I think this is perfect for the Cincinnati Bengals to help with the defense. Coming in at number 11, I have the Miami Dolphins selecting Jermon McCoy, cornerback from Tennessee. McCoy tore his ACL in January of 2025 and didn't play at all last season, but he is fast, physical, and a playmaking cornerback who can help the Dolphins in the secondary. It will be interesting to see how he looks next season playing for the first time in essentially 2 years, but I think he's a stud. So I think this is a perfect pick for Miami. 12, I have the Dallas Cowboys selecting T.J. Parker, an edge from Clemson. Parker didn't live up to expectations of 2025, but he finished the year strong with a couple of sacks against in-state rival South Carolina. Parker's quickness and use of strong hands can help him wreak havoc coming off the edge. Dallas could use more bodies on the D line and on the front after trading Micah Parsons last season. So I think this is perfect for the Cowboys. 13, I have the Los Angeles Rams selecting Kenyon Sadiq, a tight end from Oregon. Sadiq is the best tight end in this year's class. He is rangy, quick, and has very good hands as well. He's essentially an extra wide receiver and will give the Rams a versatile game breaker that they didn't have at the position the last couple years. He is also a very physical and very good run blocker as well. He is a guy that he could help excel the Rams offensive even more, surrounding with Nakua, the two running backs as well. So I think this is a perfect pick for the Rams. 14, I have the Baltimore Ravens selecting Mekhi Lemon, a wide receiver from Southern California. Lemon is capable of winning against all types of coverages. His 96.3 receiving yards per game was the third most of any player in the FBS last season. He is also competitive after the catch as well. His 21 forced missed tackles ranked 14th among FBS receivers in 2024. His quickness and elusiveness makes him one of the best wide receivers in this year's class and a perfect fit to pair alongside Lamar Jackson. At 15, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers selecting Kendrell Folk, an edge from Auburn. The Buccaneers are in dire need of defensive line help, with Hassan Reddick and Logan Hall set to be free agents, and Folk can potentially provide that. He is an NFL-ready run defender with strong hands and has massive upside as a pass rusher. His ability to disrupt gives Folk room to grow as a pass rusher. So those are that's my mock draft of the first 15 picks in the 2026 NFL Draft. Well, that wraps up episode 2 of Gavin's College Football Talk. Thank you so much for listening and joining me for another episode. I'm going to have episode 3 hopefully up soon. But until then, thanks again for listening to this podcast. Take care. Have a good one. God bless. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.